Welcome to Whips in the Dungeon 101.47. Today we're going to talk about the characteristics of a good short bullwhip. Now I do have an earlier video, characteristics of a good short whip, but the reason I'm going to hone in on bullwhips is because bullwhip style is a little bit different. As you get more into advanced throwing, there are differences between the way a bullwhip's thrown and the way a snake whip is thrown. And there is one other component of a bullwhip, the handle, that is another variable to consider when you're thinking about purchasing a bullwhip or you're looking for a whip maker to purchase a bullwhip from. So we're going to look at a collectible, a Mike Murphy whip. I say it's collectible because he is no longer platting. Then we're going to look at a Peter Jack, and then we're going to look at an Axle whip. Okay, Axle's very well known, very popular in the scene. We're going to look at real quickly at these three whips and compare them using my four characteristics of a good short bullwhip. Okay, I personally don't like a wrist loop on a bullwhip. This one wasn't custom ordered. I bought this from a vendor, so the wrist loop was already there. I like a clean pommel because the pommel acts as a ball and socket in the palm of my hand. Traditional 4-foot bullwhip is going to have about a 6-inch handle. Over the years, I've learned I like a little bit longer handle than 6 inches because with my style of throwing the forward figure 8, I was finding I was catching my ear on the backhand side, and that little bit of extra length of handle helps me out. But don't expect your bullwhip to have a 9-inch handle or longer than 6 inches for a 4-foot. A 3-foot bullwhip's going to typically have about a 5-inch handle. So you have the handle. Now here's your first characteristic to look for. You should be able to run your hand down the thong. It should feel like smooth as a baby's butt, continuous taper all the way to the keeper, and you should not be able to feel any drops or transitions. It should not feel like you're driving on a road up north and there's a bunch of potholes in it. It should be completely smooth. Okay? The second test is it should roll out straight with the belly. Every whip has a belly and a spine. Typically on the forehand side, most people throw with the belly. So therefore you want that whip to roll perfectly straight, so when you point it, it goes exactly where you throw it. You don't want it to roll out and take a jog to the right or the left. Okay? Now on the backhand side, if you've watched me throw very carefully, you're going to see sometimes I'm throwing with my backhand, when I throw a bullwhip, backhand directly toward the target. When I'm throwing with a backhand directly toward the target, I'm throwing against the spine of the whip. Therefore, one of my tests is the whip. Now, the whip is never going to have the same natural rollout against the spine that it has when you're throwing with the belly, but it should have a straight arc. If it doesn't have a straight arc, then your backhand is always going to be off. So it should at least have a straight arc. The fourth test is about every 18 inches underneath the pineapple knot. You take that radius and you roll the whip around itself and you look for kinks. Does it maintain that radius and that arc as you're rolling the whip around itself? That's going to tell you a lot about how that belly was platted and how careful the whip maker was in doing transitions. Now if you look right there, it's not a perfect arc, but it's close. It's very good. Okay? So now quickly let's look at the Peter Jack. Okay? If I do the first test, there's a little bump there, very slight. There's one right there. There's one right there, but these are very marginal. It rolls perfectly straight. That's probably the most important. of the 4 tests. Now against the spine, it arcs straight. Okay, now we'll do the last test. This is actually the hardest test. First 18 inches, rolls around fine. That's probably the easiest part of the plaiting for most whip makers. That actually is pretty good. Again, over here, about the same spot, the Murphy had a little trouble. There's a little bit of trouble there. Okay, so now let's go to axle whip and do the same 4 tests. This is only a 3-foot bullwhip, it's not a 4-foot, so it has a little bit shorter handle. When I run my hand down the thong, there's a bump there, there's one there, there's one there. You could probably see it's good to about there, and then there's a few little bumps in it. If I roll it out, it rolls out pretty straight. It's only a 3-foot, it don't have far to go. It tends to want to drift a little bit to the right. When I roll it straight, it gets to about there, and then it goes to the right, maybe a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Oh, now it went farther that time. Okay. Now if I was throwing it a 3 or 4 inch circle, I think I could stay within the 3 or 4 inch circle, but this whip definitely goes out and takes the dog leg to the right when it's rolling with its belly. Now when I arc it against its spine, let me look at it against the sheepskin. Okay. It's arcing a little bit to the left. So that makes sense. If you roll it with the belly, it arcs to the right. If you roll it against the spine, it arcs to the left a little bit. But again, it's a very short whip. I would be using that at a house party or in dungeon play very close to someone. There should be no reason why I couldn't throw that whip with enough accuracy to play in the dungeon. Now, if I took that whip maker up to a 4-foot whip or longer, I would really want to look carefully at that whip before I decided to maybe buy that whip because of that. But characteristics, 4 characteristics of a whip, and one of the considerations you have to consider is the length of the handle. And as you buy more and more whips and get more into your whip collection, you're going to find which length handle bullwhip that you prefer. My personal preference is a 9-inch.